Walk down the canned bean aisle with me. Stop in front of the shelf. That can in your hand, the one that costs $1 and change, is mostly water. Middle of the road beans, suspended in liquid, sold to you at nearly 3 times the price of the same bean dried. I am going to show you what the pot does instead, and by the time we are done, you will look at that aisle differently. The Fonda pot feeds a family of 4 for a full week on less than $3 of dried beans. That is the answer up front. Now let me show you the arithmetic that makes it true. A plate had to cost less than the bus ride to work. That is the whole recipe. I am Esperanza. I cooked at a Fonda in Guadalajara from 1974 to 2006, feeding construction crews their lunch for less than the fare to the job site. A man walked in at noon with 3 pesos. If my plate cost more, he ate nothing, and I went home with a full pot. So I learned the bean. Not because I loved it, though I came to, because it was the arithmetic that kept my doors open. Here is that arithmetic, plainly. A can of pinto beans costs about $1, and once you drain the liquid, gives you 1 3/4 cups of actual beans. The same dollar buys a pound of dried pinto beans, and that pound, once soaked and cooked, becomes 6 cups. More than 3 times the food for the same money, and the ratio holds steady. It held when tortillas in Mexico jumped from 15.5 pesos a kilo to over 23, and it holds through whatever your own grocery bill is doing right now. The gap is not inflation. It is water, packaging, and the convenience of not thinking about dinner until it is already on you. Scale that up to a real week. A family of 4 eating a half-cup portion of beans each night needs 14 cups over 7 days. That is a bit over 2 pounds of dried beans. Call it $2.70. To get the same 14 cups from cans, you are opening 8 of them at roughly $8. The pot is not a frugal trick. It is the difference between $2.70 and $8 every single week for the exact same bean. At the Fonda, we bought beans by the sack. Not because we were poor, because the sack was the arithmetic that worked. A 25-kilo sack fed my counter for a week and left margin for the good lard and the real chiles. The bean was the backbone. Everything else was decoration. Canned beans would have broken that backbone in a season, the way they break a household budget now, month after month, without anyone noticing the bleeding. So the arithmetic is settled. What nobody told you is the science of the soak, and it will turn your pot upside down. Your mother meant well when she taught you plain water and no salt until the end. I followed that rule through the 1970s and served tough-skinned beans more often than I care to count. The food scientists finally looked at the pot and showed us the truth was inverted. The enemy is not the salt. It is the calcium and magnesium already locked inside the bean skin, cross-linking the pectin into a rigid glue that resists water. My no-salt soak left those bridges whole, so the bean fought the water all day and lost. Hard skin wrapped around a mushy heart. J. Kenji Lopez Alt's testing with Serious Eats documented the fix. 3 tablespoons of salt dissolved in 4 quarts of water. Soak for 8 to 24 hours. The sodium ions displace the calcium and magnesium, and since sodium cannot form those rigid bridges, the pectin loosens and the skin softens before the bean ever sees a flame. The beans cook faster, the skins expand evenly, and the blowouts that turn a pot to mush plummet. The salt also seasons the bean from the inside out, instead of leaving a bland center under a salty coat. Drain that brine, rinse, and cook in fresh water. Now the second secret enters the pot. The pH of your cooking water decides tenderness. A mildly alkaline environment accelerates pectin breakdown through beta elimination, so a pinch of baking soda in the soak or the first boil delivers creamy soft beans faster. The exact texture that makes refried beans sing. But acid is the saboteur. Tomatoes, vinegar, or citrus added too early protonate the pectin and lock it in place. Your beans stay hard and granular no matter how many hours pass. So the Fonda rule stands: beans reach full tenderness in a neutral or slightly alkaline broth before anything acidic touches the pot. Chiles and tomatoes come after, never before. Yet once you have that flawless, creamy pot, a different thread creeps in, and it is not in the brine at all. One more variable defeats even the perfect brine, and it is quiet. The age of the bean. After 12 to 18 months in a silo or on a shelf, internal moisture drops below what hydration needs, and the bean refuses to soften no matter the brine. I learned this in the early 1990s when I bought a sack from a man I did not usually use and simmered those beans 6 hours to pebbles. Old beans have no rescue. Buy from a source that moves stock fast. The second quiet variable is water. Hard water is full of dissolved calcium and magnesium, which refortify the exact crosslinks the brine works to break. In hard water towns, you can boil beans 6 hours and still get tough skins. The remedy is plain: purified or filtered water for the soak and the boil. Now, why the bean never stands alone? It is half of the oldest nutritional partnership in the Americas. The other half is corn, treated the Mesoamerican way for over 3,000 years. That treatment is nixtamalization, and it is why Mexican food sustains hardworking people on a tiny budget. Raw field corn is largely indigestible, its nutrients locked up. Eat untreated corn as a staple and you get pellagra. The 4 Ds: dermatitis, diarrhea, dementia, death. A niacin deficiency that killed millions in Europe and the American South, precisely because they took the seed and threw away the indigenous knowledge of how to treat it. The science is beautiful. Corn steeped in an alkaline solution, water with wood ash for potassium hydroxide, or slaked lime for calcium hydroxide, undergoes a cascade. The alkali dissolves the hemicellulose in the outer hull and renders the grain digestible. It breaks the bonds trapping niacin and releases it. It increases calcium content by up to 800%. It improves the amino acid profile by freeing tryptophan. And it destroys mycotoxins like aflatoxin B1. One process, 4 benefits, 3,000 years old. Then the bean walks in. Corn is short on lysine and tryptophan. Beans are full of them. Beans are short on methionine. Corn has plenty. Alone, incomplete proteins. Together, in the same meal, a complete protein rivaling animal meat. That is the engine that powered Mesoamerican civilization, and why the Fonda plate always has both, the bean pot and the masa. In the modern kitchen, you do not slake lime and grind on a volcanic metat, though I still dream of the sound. You use masa harina, the flour the industrial cooks made by nixtamalizing for you, commercialized in the 1950s. It only needs water to come back, warm, not cold, because the heat activates the residual starches into a cohesive elastic dough. Test with your thumb. Press deep into a ball, and if the edges do not crack, the masa is ready. Diana Kennedy and Rick Bayless, the two cooks who taught the English-speaking world to respect this food, both hammered the same point. The masa is not a side dish. It is the vessel that turns a bowl of beans into a meal. So how do you eat the same pot all week without tiring? Change the shape of the corn around the beans. Palate fatigue is real, but it is not the beans' fault. It is the cook failing to vary the delivery. The two best deliveries I know come from my tradition. The first is the tetela, a triangular masa pocket stuffed with beans from the Mixteca region of Oaxaca. Take about 60 grams of masa, Press it thin between 2 sheets of plastic. Lay a spoonful of thick seasoned black beans in the center like gold in a purse, and fold 3 edges inward to seal a triangle. Toast it on a dry cast iron comal until the flat surfaces char. The interior steams through, and you have a portable meal out of pennies of masa and a spoonful of last night's beans. I served tetelas to men who ate beans for 40 years and never heard a complaint, because the crunch made the bean new. The second is the chochoyote, the little masa dumpling with the crater. A solid ball of masa, dropped in boiling broth, takes forever to cook through, the outside disintegrating before the center gelatinizes. So the cook presses a dimple into the center, increasing surface area so the heat reaches the middle fast, and the crater holds a pool of broth in every bite. I enrich that dough with lard, knead in epazote, drop the balls into the bean broth. 15 to 20 minutes, they float when done, and a bowl of soup becomes a meal a man can work a full day on. These are mechanics, not decorations. I charge 2 pesos for a bowl of beans and a stack of tortillas, and still fed myself because the masa cost next to nothing and the beans less. The plate was arithmetic, and it worked because the bean and the corn never left each other's side. Now the part nobody wants to talk about, because it decides whether your all-week pot is a triumph or a trip to the emergency room. At the Fonda, a spoiled pot meant lost earnings, and worse, a sick customer who never came back. I learned to read a pot by touch and smell long before anyone gave me numbers for it. But your nose is not as reliable as you think, and science now gives us the exact line for safety that a good cook could only sense before. Cooked beans held at or below 40 degrees Fahrenheit in the refrigerator are good for 3 to 4 days, not 7. That window exists because refrigeration slows most bacteria without stopping the dangerous ones. Listeria, certain strains of salmonella, which keep multiplying slowly even in the cold. By the 4th day, the bacterial load on a pot of moist, protein-rich beans starts to matter, even for a healthy adult. And here is the part that would have scared me most, behind my own counter. These particular pathogens do not smell wrong. The smell test, the thing I trusted my whole career, is not a safety test. It is a wish, so the all-week pot needs a second home, the freezer. Food held at 0 degrees Fahrenheit or below is safe indefinitely. Quality holds 3 to 6 months, but safety holds forever. The trick is timing. Cook the pot Sunday and portion it immediately, not on Thursday when it is already living on borrowed time. The Sunday through Wednesday supply cools and goes in the fridge. The Friday, Saturday, and Sunday portions go straight into the freezer that same day, while the beans are still at their best, not rescued on day 4 but protected from day 1. The other rule that keeps a big pot honest is the 2-hour rule. Cooked beans should not sit at room temperature more than 2 hours. This is where a big pot fails most often, because a deep vat of dense beans holds its heat stubbornly. Set it whole into the refrigerator and the center can stay warm for hours. Exactly the kind of warm a bacterium wants. We used to ladle the pot into shallow pans to cool at the Fonda, out of nothing but habit and cramped counter space. I know now that habit was the science, working in our favor before anyone had explained why. Put simply, cook the pot Sunday. Cool it fast in shallow pans. Keep 4 days in the fridge. Freeze the rest that same day. When Friday's bowl comes around, thaw it in the fridge overnight or heat it straight from frozen until it reaches 165 degrees at the center. A few extra minutes, nothing more, and a pot meant to feed a family all week does exactly that, safely. This is the whole architecture: the bean, the brine, the baking soda, the purified water, the masa, the tetela, the chochoyote, the freezer. Each piece is small, Together they turn less than $3 of dried beans into a full week of meals for four. And that arithmetic is not an accident, it is the design. Every element in the pot earns its place by doing a job, and every job is in service of one goal: a dinner that is hot, nourishing, and already paid for before the week begins. A plate of beans is not a punishment, and it was never poor people's food. It is arithmetic, and good arithmetic. And it is the same arithmetic whether you are feeding a construction crew in Guadalajara in 1980 or a family of four in a kitchen that has never seen a como. The bean and the corn, the brine and the freezer, the tetela and the chochoyote, they are a whole way of keeping people fed, and none of it is sad. It is the opposite of sad. It is a family sitting down to a hot dinner every night of the week. There is no money in teaching you to cook beans. There is money in selling you the can. So nobody teaches the pot. The bean, the brine, the baking soda, the purified water, the masa, the tetela, the chochoyote, the freezer. Each piece is small. Together they turn less than $3 of dried beans into a full week of meals for four. And that arithmetic is not an accident. It is the design. Every element in the pot earns its place by doing a job, and every job is in service of one goal: a dinner that is hot, nourishing, and already paid for before the week begins. A plate of beans is not a punishment, and it was never poor people's food. It is arithmetic, and good arithmetic. And it is the same arithmetic whether you are feeding a construction crew in Guadalajara in 1980 or a family of four in a kitchen that has never seen a coma. The bean and the corn, the brine and the freezer, the tetela and the chochoyote. They are a whole way of keeping people fed, and none of it is sad. It is the opposite of sad. It is a family sitting down to a hot dinner every night of the week. There is no money in teaching you to cook beans. There is money in selling you the can. So nobody teaches the pot.